This is a perfect guitar lesson for every single beginner guitar player because it's all about blues guitar. And there is so much transferability from blues guitar to other genres of music. So if you're a newer player, the blues can be a great place to start because you can easily expand, outwards from blues concepts. But if you are newer, it gives you an opportunity to play with important concepts, express yourself creatively, and even improvise a little bit and jump in on some jam scenarios. So grab your guitars and let's jump in. What's up, guitar players? My name is Guthrie with Easy Guitar Practice, and like I said, I'm going to be showing you a great way to start chipping away at blues guitar so you can sound great even though you're at the beginning of your guitar playing journey, which I think is really helpful for motivating us to keep going with this instrument, because I recognize, there's a lot of times where this instrument can be rather frustrating, and this is a great way to sound really good and start playing with some cool concepts that will be important throughout your entire, guitar playing journey. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this into 3 steps, really simple steps that you can have a lot of fun with. And I'll say stay till the end, because I'm going to be sharing with you some what I would call bonus information and some cool licks that you can incorporate into the system and have even more fun with, and really just run with these concepts, okay? So step 1 is just getting some really simple chord shapes and scale shapes under our fingers. You don't need to know guitar theory. You don't need to know bar chords or even complex chords. These are really simple shapes. And we're gonna start with this shape right here, kind of like a little triangle. And this is a dominant 7 shape, right? So in this context, it is an A dominant 7, but we can just call it an A7. And we're not gonna get very complicated. Just bank that information. It's an A7, okay? And we're gonna move that, right? So this is on the low E, the A, and the D string. We're gonna move it to the A, the D, and the G string, same shape. And this is a D7 chord. So you can just think about that low note, right? So that's an A, this is a D, D7, A7. All right, and we're gonna move it up here eventually to an E7, D7, A7. Hopefully you can already hear that kind of turnaround that happens in blues music. All right, so just those shapes make up an entire 12-bar blues. We will get to the concept of 12-bar blues in a second. But that's it. It's just one shape in 3 different places. A7, D7, E7. All right, so A, D, and E. Now that's what's called the 1-4-5, all right, the 1-4-5 progression. If we take the major scale, 1, 2, 3, and we're in the key of A, 1, 2, 3, D is 4, E is 5. So that's why they call it the 1-4-5. You may not have heard that phrase, but in case you had and you're wondering yourself, well, why is that? Why is that called the 1-4-5? That is the reason, because it would be the 4, the 4th note in the major scale, and the 5th note. First note would be A, obviously, then D, then E, right? So you can hear that kind of function. Great, that's it. Done with the chords. Now the scale shape that we would learn would be the A minor pentatonic, all right? It sounds very dry in that context, right? We're just, linear going up and down, but I promise there are some really simple ways to make that sound very flavorful and very cool, okay? So we've got this shape, this little triangle shape. We're playing it in 3 different places, and we've got this minor pentatonic scale shape. So if you wanted to turn this into a little mini practice routine, just to get these under your finger, you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, right? You can kind of go in this nice little loop of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can do that for 2.5 minutes, and then you can just go through that pentatonic shape. And you can do that for 2.5 minutes. And now you've got this little 5-minute warm-up where you're getting familiar with some really important shapes. Like I said, you're about to see, how these shapes can be really beneficial and really cool, and you can expand and make them fun and everything like that. Okay? That is step 1, done and dusted. Easy, right? Just a quick break to remind you all that if you're enjoying this lesson, you appreciate the information that I am presenting to you here, to actually physically like the video and subscribe to the channel. It's very helpful for me. It allows me to keep making these videos and these lessons. It pushes the video to more people and gets them, aware of the channel, and all that stuff is super helpful. So there's the plug, there's the spiel. Now back to the lesson. Step 2 is just understanding the progression of the 12-bar blues. All right? Just as it's stated in the name, we are playing 12 bars, and we're playing them in a specific way that allows us to just repeat, repeat, repeat. Okay? So let's just go over this. In an A, in a 12-bar blues in A, we're going to go with this chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to play this. Then we're going to go to D. 2, 2, 3, 4. Back to A. 3, 2, 3, 4. Stay on A. 4, 2, 3, 4. Back to D. 5, 2, 3, 4. 6, 2, 3, 4. A. 7, 2, 3, 4. 8, 2, 3, 4. Now we go up to E. 9, 2, 3, 4. D. 10, 2, 3, 4. And then A. 11, 2, 3, 4. 12 on E. 2, 3, 4. And then we begin again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just do it with me so you can understand this. A. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 2, 3, 4. 5, 2, 3, 4. 6, 2, 3, 4. 7, 2, 3, 4. 8, 2, 3, 4. 9, 2, 3, 4. 10, 2, 3, 4. 11, 2, 3, 4. 12, 2, 3, 4. Restart. So same thing as that step 1. In step 2, just to understand the function of the 12-bar blues, because this becomes really important to how you layer some solos over it. You want to be able to understand how it functions, right? So that when there's a chord change, you understand, oh, I can throw in an interesting little flavor here, and you can anticipate it. And that's a great way to get better at anticipating chord changes, because it's just a loop of 3 chords. So you can get good at it in the blues, but then you can take it to a pop scenario where you've got G, A minor, C, D, you go back to B minor, as a little change or something, and you can understand those functions and be able to play with those because you have this understanding in a much more simple context, all right? The other way to do this, and the other way you'll see this played, is we start with 4 bars on A. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Then we go to D, 5, 2, 3, 4, 6, 2, 3, 4, 7, 2, 3, 4, 8, 2, 3, 4. And you'll see, just like the other scenario, 9, we're landing on E. So that turnaround is happening on the 9th bar, just as it would in the first scenario. So the first scenario, we're just switching from A to D faster. In the second scenario, we're lingering on A for 4 bars, okay? That's the big difference between those two contexts. Other than that, it's the same, right? So how we start is the only difference. The finish and everything is the same. So just keep that in mind because if you are playing with somebody and they're, doing a different one of those, they're doing one of the two, you don't want to get caught up being like, well, what am I doing wrong here, right? So those are really the two scenarios that you'll see. I don't want to be too broad in general. There's ways you can play with this. You can change up the chords and everything. But for now, that's a great base of support, I think. So step 3 is now incorporating some lead elements. Before we get fancy with it, all right, before we get fancy with it, we just want to run through that scale. So what you can do, the A minor pentatonic scale I'd shown you earlier, what you can do is go online and search for an A blues backing track, right? Blues in A, 12-bar blues in A. I can even link one right here. I'll link one right here, but you can play around with finding different ones if you want. And while that's playing, go through the scale in rhythm. And if you need to go slower, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's okay. But I think practicing the scale in rhythm, and of course, if you're hearing the 12-bar blues behind it, it's going to be really helpful, again, for expanding your understanding, getting you comfortable with the scenario of the blues, right? And the sound and the feel and all of those textures inside of the blues. So there's really step 3, all right? For me, those are the most important steps because those are like the primary concepts. We're going to get into like fluid bonus territory right now, okay? Practice that for 5 minutes. If you go 5, 5, 5, you got 15 minutes. I think this will make you a much better guitar player, especially if you stick with this for a few weeks, maybe even a few months, either on the front end of your sessions, or maybe you just devote an entire session to this, 2 or 3 times a week, whatever it might look like. I think this is really helpful. Now, as a bonus, you would want to start getting into, embellishments and playing around with, tones and flavors that actually make your lead lines sound really solid, all right? And staying within that pentatonic shape. So, well, that's all inside of that pentatonic shape. I threw in an extra blues note, and I'll say this, that'll be kind of the first bonus piece of information, is that the blues scale is often that extra note, right? So in A, it would be the 6th fret of the A string, all right? But you can also add this note, right? Because if we were going to open up the A7 to all 6 strings, this would be the shape. So this note would actually fit into that shape. So that does work inside of the blues progression. Now this is adding some elements, so I don't want you to get overwhelmed and feel like you have to add this into your practice routine, but if you want to spice things up a little bit, you absolutely can. On top of that, we can play what's called the Dorian scale. Don't worry about where the Dorian scale comes from and the theory behind it and all that stuff. It's just these additional notes. So you can think about it in terms of that pentatonic shape, and you're adding this note, this note, this note, this note, and this note, all right? And it's really just 3 notes, or it's actually just 2 notes, but they're repeating, all right? So just 2 notes, but repeating, okay? And putting them, inside of that kind of pentatonic shape. So now you can have all these additional notes and flavors at your disposal as you're, working through the scale, right? For those 5 minutes, you can play around with some of those additional notes. You can just do the scale exactly like that. All right? and you'll have all these additional notes under your fingers. And all of those work for various reasons inside of a blues progression, especially a dominant blues progression, right? You can do minor, you can do major blues progressions. We're going with dominant right here. So there's a reason why those notes work well, but you can play around with those inside of your scale scenario. Okay, so that's really the bonus piece, part one. What I'm gonna do now is share with you three beginner licks that you can start messing around with on the back end of this. So I think get the concepts down first. Then incorporate these three licks on top of that backing track and just play around with, putting them in different places, right? So, each lick over the A will be a little different. The texture will be a little different than over the D, over the E, right? During the turnaround, things like that. So just keep that in mind, that even though you're repeating the lick, pay attention to how the flavor changes, how the texture changes, okay? So here's lick one. Let's just break down, a few of the technical skills in there, and we'll slow things down a bit as well. It's a gradual bend. When you're bending, support your ring finger in this scenario, right? We're bending with the ring finger. Support your ring finger with your middle and index. And we're bending basically slowly a whole step up. So we're basically trying to make this 7th fret sound like the 9th fret. You might not quite get there, right? It's a gradual bend. It's not super important to match it perfectly. Right, I don't fully have to get there, but we're kind of bending it further than a half step. But again, there's some wiggle room here, so it's not the end of the world. Think about that's the same up here. So it's okay if it's a little sloppy, right, if that makes sense. Now, if you want to work on that vibrato and just take it really slow without the backing track, I'm oftentimes just bending, almost like instead of bending up, I'm pulling down, right? So same kind of deal. It's just a little more subtle, but it adds some flavor versus there's a difference there. All right, so let's do that again. And then we're just finishing the last kind of important skill is that pull right here. Right? So you're taking your, ring finger on the 7th fret of the D string. And you're also having your index finger, pressed down on the 5th fret. There's a pull. Same thing if you want to add a vibrato, basically like I'm pulling down in that scenario, and then bringing it back to its original position. Down, up, down, up, down, up. All right? These can be complicated, so don't, worry too much about it sounding like that right away. Go slow. Okay? And you can play it that slow. With the backing track on. It doesn't have to be a full speed. Play with, your breaks, the rhythm, the beats you're taking, things like that. But there is lick number one. Let's move on to lick number two. So using the lower notes, the D through the low E, that's the big important part in this lick. That slide from 5 to 7 on the A string. And just like the other lick, some of those, pulling on the notes, a little bit of vibrato, things like that can make individual notes sound really expressive. So this could just sound like this. It's not like the worst thing ever, but when you add those little elements, those little small pieces, those vibratos, things like that, it can make things sound really expressive without, making things too complicated, okay? One more time. All right, so lick number 3 is a bit more complicated than the first 2 licks, but if you're a beginner guitar player, those first 2 licks might have elements that are difficult for you and might, present some sticky points, some parts that you have trouble working through. And that's kind of the deal when we're beginners, is taking concepts and skills that are a bit out of reach and going for them anyways and just kind of chipping away at them, sounding out the skills. And over time, we will, get better at them. We do, ultimately get them under our fingers. But that's the deal. Okay, so this one's a little more complicated, but it's okay if the other ones also give you some trouble. All right, but here is lick number 3. So we've got some elements, or we've got an element, that note from the Dorian scale. And as I'm saying that, I may have brain farted and called it the Mixolydian earlier, which, my apologies if I did do that. I will have already corrected it in the editing, but we've got some bending here. All right, so we've got that element. We've got this gradual bend, just like we did on the first lick. Instead of bringing it down, we're just going right to the 5th fret. So you kind of have to transfer quickly, and that skill in and of itself might take you a second. It's okay if it takes you a second. Then we're doing it again on the B string, except we're going, bend on the B string, the 8th fret of the B string, back to the high E. And then we're coming down. All right, and that we are bending all the way up and down. And you can hear it's a whole step bend. Notice I'm doing that little pull down on the G string. So just things to attack and go for, even if they're complicated, even if they're a little out of reach, still really important when we're beginners to, again, try to chip away at those skills, okay? So step 1, just get the chords under your fingers, all right? And the, shape, kind of, messing around with that. Step 2 would be, getting the 12-bar blues under your fingers, right? And playing that, 12-bar blues progression with the metronome. You can try to play along with it with the backing track that I put up there. And then step 3 would be running through the scale, all right? And kind of just going through that with the backing track on. You can do it with a metronome. Either way is fine. And then step 4 would be trying to bring in some of those licks, all right? And even playing around with the Dorian scale. Again, apologies if I misspoke earlier. I cannot remember, and maybe I just had the Mixolydian on the brain, but I believe I misspoke. But you can play around with that scale and kind of just do it in a linear, fashion, bringing that blues element, right? And then, of course, bringing in the licks as well. So starting with just a little bit of both, the shapes and the scale, 2.5 minutes of each, 5 minutes of 12-bar blues, 5 minutes of the scale with the blues in the background or a metronome, and then, maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the licks, because that's a little bit more fun and all that stuff. If you found this helpful, like and subscribe. Helpful to me, and share with anyone else who is a beginner guitar player that you think would find this beneficial. All right, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.